People of the world, welcome to class. I'm your substitute teacher, Mr. Kautzman. Put down the energy drink, Kyle. Today on the show, Parler. I'm being told by the administration that I'm not supposed to talk about politics, but today we're going to talk about Parler. Just don't tell them. Is it good for conservatives? What really is going on there? Twitter working on new warnings. Uh-oh, that could get political too. Pinterest transparency report. Is Facebook the only social media platform that is getting hacked? Facebook taking down pages tied to Steve Bannon. Oh no, more politics. Twitter under monetizing. Should they be making more money than they actually are? Google ad prices are stifling to small businesses. Will we ever see competition? And how much Biden and Trump spent on Facebook and Google ads. Class, do you have any thoughts? Any guesses on how much they spent? Is it $2 trillion? 5 million? 42,000? Get your guesses in now. Class starts now. Have a seat. Marketing as a foreign language is about to begin. Hope you have your homework ready. Parler, Facebook for conservatives. Oh my gosh, what is the plan here? Did you know that according to ksat.com, if you're on social media, specifically Facebook, you might have seen some of your friends talking about Parler recently. But what is it and why are people joining? Parler is a social media network created in September that touts itself as being privacy-focused while allowing its users to speak freely and express yourself openly without fear of being deplatformed for your views, according to the website. So, Parler, if you're wondering, is the natural antidote to what we've been seeing on Facebook and Twitter. I'm not saying that the decisions Facebook and Twitter are making are all bad. They're not. I'm saying that it is almost impossible to be balanced. I try desperately to have a balanced political view. I watch people on both sides. I digest information from both sides. I try to see the other person's perspective. If you didn't see Chappelle on SNL just yesterday, you really should. He said that he loves everybody. He just hates that feeling, that kind of ostracized feeling, or it's just really incredible. You should watch his 10 minutes he did. Ends with the mic drop. Spoiler alert. So anyway, there's a lot of people on the right who are feeling like Facebook and Twitter does not care about them, that wants to deplatform them. And it is not surprising to me at all that they are going to create their own community. I've been talking about this for weeks. My star student, Esther Sass, she's listening. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. I've been talking about how, Twitter and Facebook are really making conservatives quite upset. So back to the article. As of Monday, November 9th, Parler is trending as the top free download in the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. The up-and-coming social media app appears to be a haven for Republicans in the wake of the 2020 presidential election. A flood of new users have joined. The CEO of Parler, John Matze, said in a post on the platform that he expected 1 million or so people today, but 2, you guys are crazy, 2 million people. Not at all surprising to me. I really saw this coming. So, if you are if you're on the left, and you join Parler, it might be an interesting place to go get some different perspectives. If you're on the right, it's kind of like a safe space, apparently, for you. They may say that they're just trying to be independent and fair and balanced, but they're probably going to be a social media, platform on the right. And you could argue that Facebook and Twitter, are on the left. Obviously, this depends who your friends and family are. If all your friends are liberal, you're going to see a lot of liberal stuff. All your friends are conservative, you're going to see a bunch of conservative stuff. So according, final quote from ksat.com, all religious and non-religious users on Parler are welcome to converse civilly to discuss solutions to pressing world problems and hopefully come to understand we are all more similar than we are different. This sounds exactly, class, like what Facebook said in the onset. It's so easy to start a platform and have this kind of, hey, we just want free speech and we want to connect the world and do no evil and yay. And then, you get 42 million users, and they're all hating each other constantly. There is no perfect solution to this, but it is interesting to me that the universe will find a way. It will balance itself. The electron on a certain molecule will move to create balance. And this is just the nature of the universe we live in. Twitter working on new warnings. This from socialmediatoday.com, as Twitter continues to add warning labels to tweets which make potentially untrue claims about the results of the U.S. election and the voting process. It's also apparently testing some new warnings which expand on the current pop-ups when users attempt to retweet a disputed update. So we're talking about folks that want to retweet something that's been disputed. Twitter is trying out a new warning when people go to like a disputed tweet. It's exactly the same as the current warning when you go to retweet the same, except instead of a quote tweet option at the bottom, it has a like option instead. A like button on Twitter. Interesting. Twitter has seen significant results from adding more friction to sharing and prompting users to think more about what they're doing. I have anticipated that we're going to see something like Parler open up, where you can just do and say and be whoever you want, as sort of the opposite of this kind of behavior. But I'm not saying that this behavior is intrinsically wrong. I think that Twitter is tailoring their service to who they believe are their best audience, which are people who don't want the misinformation. I think there are people on Twitter that are sick of it, and they're losing those people as well. So it's a little bit damned if you do, damned if you don't for them. Back in June, Twitter added, back to the article, socialmediatoday.com, Twitter added a new pop-up alert on articles that users attempt to retweet without actually opening the article link and reading the post. Exactly. So they were basically saying, hey, you better actually read the stupid thing, which, kudos to Twitter for doing that. Twitter found that these prompts lead to people opening articles 40% more often. So good, they're getting people to actually read the articles. A significant increase showing that even simple reminders can have a significant impact on user behavior. Hit the like button, please. Simple reminders. In the lead up to the U.S. election, Twitter removed the straight retweet option for all U.S. users, with the prompt opening to quote tweet window instead. Okay, so Twitter working on some new warnings. Again, I think you're going to see people flooding to places like Parler, who don't want to be told, even in the slightest, what they should or shouldn't do, that they should read, that they should not read, that they are saying something that is factually inaccurate according to Twitter, etc. So not surprising to me that we're going to see a move to communities like Parler, but how many people? Will it remain fringe, or will it really take off? 2 million users in the wake of the 2020 election is pretty impressive. Jason Davenport writes, getting people to open the articles. An open article does not mean it was read. Jason Davenport gets a star. He gets a star, A+, Jason Davenport. That is absolutely true. If Twitter's saying you better read it to retweet it, and you just open it and you skim half a line and hit retweet, well, there you have the vast majority of people on the internet. This was interesting. Pinterest transparency report from socialmediatoday.com as well. A lot of Facebook and Twitter headlines of late talking about how there's a lot of misinformation being spread on those platforms. Does Pinterest play any role at all? To the article we go, as Twitter continues to add warning labels to tweets which make potentially untrue claims about the result of the U.S. election and the voting process. It also apparently is testing some new warnings which expand on current pop-ups, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we talked about this. Basically, this Pinterest transparency report shows that there was some Russian involvement in Pinterest. However, it is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what's happening on Facebook and Twitter. However, there was some funkiness with Nextdoor as well. So Pinterest, Nextdoor, some of these secondary and tertiary social media platforms are not immune to foreign intervention and misinformation. So Facebook takes down pages tied to Steve Bannon. This from BusinessInsider.com. Facebook has deleted a network of pages with ties to Donald Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon. The Washington Post reported on Monday. The accounts with a total of 2.5 million followers were spreading election misinformation. Specifically, they were promoting the Stop the Steal campaign. So Facebook making some moves, throwing their weight around when it comes to what they believe is misinformation. Again, you could make the argument that everything Steve Bannon was doing here was complete and total misinformation, that he should not have been doing it, etc. But that does not mean that you're not going to end up with a ton of people switching over to places like Parler, because even Alex Jones every now and then is correct. The example I like to use is Epstein, which early in the sort of Epstein narrative, no one would believe that Bill Clinton went to this crazy island, and now there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Epstein did a lot of these horrifying things, and the trial, etc. So things that are very often now turn out to be wrong, or people who tend to push conspiracy theories every now and then are right. It doesn't mean that they're always wrong. And so that's tough to just simply say, we shouldn't listen to this person at all. Again, this is why places like Parler, I think, are beginning to crop up. So Twitter under monetizing, according to Medium.com. Improved product features are overdue, but what Twitter needs is a different business model that reflects a glaring reality. The firm is a niche player with a high-value audience that feels remarkably 2015 at Snap, a firm with a full-time CEO. Daily active users increased 19% and revenue increased 52%. Facebook daily active users increased 12% and revenues increased 22% on a base 8 times that of Twitter. Twitter's the only firm in its competitive set that grossly under monetizes its users. So, according to this article, this particular author is talking about moving to a subscription. I am critical of the subscription model for Twitter. It seems as though I don't know what the benefit is. I understand what a YouTube Premium benefit does for me. I don't have to watch ads anymore. Fantastic. But the entire Twitter sphere is just open and free, and you can see what you want and go what you want. I don't know what the benefit is. I'm not sold on what a Twitter subscription would actually do for me. And so it is possible that they're under monetizing, but it's also possible that it's difficult to monetize. Facebook has ridiculous demographic data for everyone that's on the platform, and so it is the perfect place for advertisers to brand. Google is fantastic because they can drop an ad exactly in the moment when someone is searching for a specific product or service. So those two things are the vast majority of what people want. Where does Twitter come in? You see what I'm saying? It just doesn't feel like it's got as strong a potential monetization angle. Google Ads prices are stifling, according to DetroitNews.com. When asked about Google, Brian Clayton voices a familiar lament among small business owners. Quote, "You keep getting squeezed further and further down the search results page," says Clayton, CEO of GreenPal, a company that operates an app to help homeowners find lawn care. As a startup, you don't have $1 million advertising budget. The Justice Department sued Google on October 20th for anti-competitive behavior, according to DetroitNews.com, saying the company's dominance in online search and advertising harms rivals and consumers. Owners such as Clayton have a different beef. What's unfair about Google, they say, is the way it gives the greatest prominence in search results to the companies that spend the most on advertising. And there's some truth there. Owners such as Clayton companies covet the top spots in Google search results, the first page of rankings, and the top of subsequent pages. But if too many companies vie for one of these spots, it can jump the cost for small business, just like primetime TV commercials. Google controlling about 90% of global internet searches. The Justice Department sued Google on Tuesday, alleging it uses monopoly power in search to squelch competition. Business owners' concerns about the cost of advertising aren't directly related to the government's lawsuit, although the company's dominance of search market has been alleged to be a factor. So the cost per click is crazy, and the only real competitor is Bing. So yeah, you can go over to Bing and you can spend money and you can spend less. They just tend to not convert as well for some strange reason. So does Google have a monopoly on search? Yep. Are we receiving an incredible number of benefits from Google? Let's not forget that Google Maps is astounding. That Google Docs being largely free is amazing. That YouTube is incredible. They really are amazing platforms, but they are not without their sin. Google makes the vast majority of its money from Google Ads. And you look at personal injury cost per click, it's crazy. $60, $80, $100 a click. So they're just raking in the cash. And the reason it works, obviously, is that people are still willing to pay for it. So it's not as if the market is just taking a nap and Google's charging whatever it wants. I mean, people are willing to pay these prices. But if you're a startup and you're trying to get into that cost per click range where you're actually competitive, good luck. It is very hard as a small business to get off the ground with advertising, which is why Facebook has grown so much, because they are relatively cheaper than Google is. So Parler is the new conservative Facebook, you could argue. 2 million new users recently after this particular election. I will make the argument that no social media platform can remain apolitical. The algorithms are going to lean in a certain direction. You could make the argument that no, Kellen, it's all based on facts. It's whatever the facts happen to be. But many times stories come out where the facts are unclear. We're not sure yet what the truth is. No one knows. Even DeepMind, Google's AlphaGo that plays the game of Go, which has the most possible variations of any board game on the planet that I'm aware of, more than chess, it still can't tell you who's going to win the game until late in the game. It doesn't know. So that's some of the most powerful computing on the planet, which is to say that we simply cannot predict the future yet. So as facts unfold, we get a better sense of what the misinformation was at the time. And so what a social media platform does in that gray area is what determines whether or not it leans to the left or the right. And conservatives, by and large, are angry at Facebook and Twitter because they believe that in that gray area that these platforms lean to the left. And I have been saying for months now that we're going to see a platform on the right, and apparently Parler is filling that space. My statement is apolitical, which is to say, I know that we will strike a balance. This is what we do as people. And so Parler is apparently that balance as far as I can tell. Twitter working on new warnings. Unsurprisingly, Twitter is going by way of increased warnings. I think they are catering to the community on Twitter that is looking for less misinformation, but they're going to lose folks. They're going to lose folks that simply don't want to adhere to these additional rules, that where Twitter makes a mistake. So CEO Jack Dorsey did apologize a couple of times for the handling of the New York Post bit. So it does happen. And people that don't like Twitter will jump on those moments, obviously. Pinterest Transparency Report. Twitter and Facebook aren't the only platforms that are being hit by misinformation, but the scale is pretty obvious that Twitter and Facebook are, by and large, the biggest. Pinterest hit with some sort of Russian interference. Facebook takes down pages tied to Steve Bannon. Again, we're seeing Facebook and Twitter make decisions about what they believe is misinformation. Can Twitter actually monetize? Leave a comment. I'm curious what you think on this one. If Twitter were to have a subscription, would you pay? Leave your comment below. I want to know, because I personally don't use Twitter. I'm not that into it, but a lot of people are. And if Twitter gave you XYZ functionality, is there anything Twitter could give you where you would go, yeah, I'll give them $5 a month or $10 a month? Because I don't see it. Google ads prices are stifling. I would agree with that. Small business owners, it's sad. And we missed this one. How much Biden and Trump spent on Facebook and Google ads? Does anyone have a guess? Okay, I'll tell you. The Trump campaign has spent $89.1 million on advertising, according to adage.com, across Facebook properties from April 9th forward versus $85.2 million by the Biden campaign. So very interesting to me that the dollar amounts are very similar. It's $89.1 million for Trump, $85.2 million for Biden. And in Google, $60.4 million was spent by Biden and $56 million by Trump. So when you bring them all together, they both spent pretty much the same amount of money on the campaign, which I find very interesting. Lanesia Kautzman in chat writes, I would give Twitter $5 a month if they could give me overwhelming feelings of love and fulfillment. So Twitter, get on that. CEO Jack Dorsey does have sort of a guru's beard at this point. So it depends, I guess, what you feel by feelings of love and fulfillment. But I'm sure Twitter's algorithm will do their best to try to understand that. Hey, did you know we have a live show, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time? You may be listening to us on the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, etc. If you want to subscribe, all you got to do is go to Marketing is a Foreign Language, and voila. in YouTube. You'll find us. Isn't that the purpose of social media, says Jason Davenport? Yeah, that's exactly what social media does, is it fills our hearts with the warm and the fuzzy. All right. Good times. Thanks for swinging on by the show today, class. Your assignment for next week is letting me know about the Twitter subscription in comments. I will see you all tomorrow, same time, same place. Class dismissed.